went down to Tulsa and recovered the house, kicked out the bad tenant, spent a lot of money getting it fixed back up. We put it on the market because the market had recovered and we could get our money back out of the house, pay for our, cover our mortgage, and actually come out with a bunch of equity. So it was a good move. But because it's a rental, and when you have an investment property and it's a rental, the government allows you to take depreciation on it every year against your taxes. Well, after you do that for several years, if you sell that property, you have to pay the government back if you sell it. So that's called capital gains or depreciation recovery. And so we had that big bill facing us, and a friend of mine in the real estate business here in Lincoln said, you don't have to pay those taxes. If you sell the place, you can do a 1031 tax exchange, sell down there, take the proceeds, and arrange to buy another rental property in Lincoln and do a swap and end up with a property here. You still have a rental property, but at least you've got it where you want it, and it's not going to be the long-distance landlording situation with a dishonest manager down in Oklahoma. So we did that, and we ended up with a little house at 22nd and A that was converted into a fourplex. And I didn't want to be a landlord. I mean, this was just purely a move based on the tax advantage of not paying your taxes by doing a swap and a trade. And the car business was going fine, everything was great. Well, so we get this place, and I'm mowing the lawn, and I'm replacing tenants as needed, doing the painting, doing all the work myself. It's just a part-time hobby thing, and it's working out pretty well. All of a sudden we're making money on it, and I was making $400 or $500 a month clear. I just couldn't believe it. So that went on for a few months, and one day Dick and I were down in Salina at a sports car club event, and we were sitting there between runs, and I was telling him, I got this rental, and I'm making I'm making more money on that than we're making on the car business. And so he said, well, can you duplicate that? Was that a unique situation? I said, I don't think so. So he said, why don't we go out and buy a bunch of properties? And he had the money, and I had the enthusiasm and willing to put in the sweat equity. We already had a company in place, a corporation we were already set up. So we made an arrangement with a bank. They were going to finance 70% of it for us, and he was going to front the down payment. And we started buying properties. And it continued to be just a one-man operation, just me. We bought another property, 7-plex, and that was 1 year. Then the next year we bought kind of an unusual building, and we found out that it's really an interesting situation. If you can find a piece of real estate that's an unusual configuration, that the standard type of investor that wants to buy either an apartment building or a commercial property or a single-family home, if it's something in the middle that's not quite what fits into the standard model for an investment analysis, that it can be bought pretty well and pretty cheaply, because nobody knows how to treat it. So we bought a building down in College View that is a combination of businesses on the ground floor and apartments above, and then a couple of garages in the back. And it was 100 years old, and it was just weird, and nobody was interested in it. It had been on the market for a while, and there was no interest. And the realtor said, hey, here's a deal for you. So you always think deals like the used car deal. There's always a problem or a reason for that. Well, it just turned out that we found that investors, it didn't fit into the mold. So we bought that building, and it's done really well for us over the years. And then we tried to look for those types of things, and we were able to do that and look for deals. And then the first few you kind of force. We had a realtor that worked with us, and we were out looking for things. And we bought things that now I probably wouldn't have bought, but we were just trying to build a portfolio. Well, in the meantime, I'm doing that. We're still running the car business. And another twist kind of came into play. So I've got two businesses going. My wife, by this time, is also running a business. We started her in a gift shop and picture framing business, because that building we bought in the College View area had an empty bay. So I just plugged her in there, and so she's running that business. So now we've got three things going. And my business partner, who already was a venture capitalist and invested in different things, different types of businesses, he had a business out in Doniphan, Nebraska, where he kind of backed into it by taking stock in lieu of payment for packaging. He's a box maker, and the company couldn't pay him for boxes that they were buying from him, so he started taking stock. And so he ended up essentially taking control of this company after the founder died of alcoholism. And so he drank himself into the grave. And so there was a situation that they needed help with out there, and by this time my business partner realized that, at least he thought, in his opinion, that I had some skills that I could help him out with the business with some problems. So I've got my wife's business, 2 other businesses, and I took on another job part-time, and I went out to Donovan, Nebraska 3 days a week and helped them to run their sales and marketing. I got an opportunity to travel all around the country. And that business was a remanufacturer of handgun ammunition. It was called 3D. I don't know if anybody's a shooter. It's been gone long enough now. I'll tell you the story about that. The founder of the company, who died of alcoholism, before he died and before my business partner realized what was going on, he had a scheme where he was taking car batteries on a piece of property out at the Alda Exchange, I-80 and Alda. They're just west of the Grand Island interchange. Has anybody ever been out to the Crane Viewing Station? If you drive out there, you get off and you see the Crane Viewing Station. This is on the right side or the north side of the road. There's an old abandoned gas station. There's a little building sits there. In that property, he was taking car batteries. He'd break them up. He had these guys working for him, probably for minimum wage. They were breaking car batteries, letting the acid run into one of the old gasoline tanks, taking the lead, putting it in a big pot and melting it, and then all the battery cases he just piled up in the back. So they're melting the lead, the fumes go up, and if anybody knows about smelting, it's not just like hot air. I mean, it's really caustic, nasty stuff that goes into the air. Lead, cadmium, arsenic, and this actually is a dust that goes up. He had some kind of a filter system in the building, but it ended up depositing all this bad stuff out behind the building in this big plume of dust. Then the fuel tank rusted out because the acid ate through it, so that's contaminated. And then he took all the battery cases in the back, and he took a bulldozer and he buried them in the ground. All this happened without the knowledge of anybody else at the ammunition plant, except the guys working for him. So he's doing this for a while, and it doesn't pay off. He figures out it's not making any money. So he stops the operation, and he leaves it all there with the ground covered and all the back stuff. But he goes to the board of the stockholders, the board of directors, of which my business partner was a member, and he convinced them to buy this property because I wasn't there. I don't know how he did it, but he got them to buy it, and they didn't know that it was a contaminated site. Then he dies. So they sent me out there to do sales and marketing, and the president of the company at that time, he decided to quit. He left, and so I became in charge of the whole operation. And when they handed me all the information, I found out that the EPA and the state were investigating contaminated wells that were nearby, and they started an investigation and found out that this property was the source of the contamination. So we had some decisions to make, and it turned out that it was a going concern and a successful business, and it would be great to have it now. One of the last classes asked, well, is it still going, or would you like to have that today in today's climate when the ammunition business is going crazy? You can't get them, so there's a shortage of ammunition. And we'd love to have it, but in order to keep the stockholders from becoming liable to the point of being sued by the EPA, we made a decision to close down the company, liquidate all the assets, and give the money, the proceeds, to the EPA in order for them to have funds to clean up the site. And so the company was dissolved, 100 people lost their jobs, and the stockholders essentially lost all their investment. Fortunately, my business partner did get back the loans that he'd given the company. We paid those off. That's the reason we kind of did it, to get him some money back, because he lost over $1 million to begin with, but at least we saved him another $500,000 by liquidating. So it was a tough decision to make, but here's another example of dishonesty and a lack of ethics in business that created that situation. So back to Lincoln, we continue to buy properties. We actually bought a couple buildings in York, and we're to this day continuing to acquire and build our business. I've since gotten my broker's license, so now I can actually manage property for other people, because that is a skill that I've developed, obviously, by our own experience. So now I can turn that into an additional profit center for our company by managing other people's properties. And so we have several that we're doing now for other folks. We're also moving into developing and building some properties for ourselves and also for some of our clients. So we're moving on and up and trying to get some of those things done. Networking and volunteering is something that I've done throughout my life and career. I've been involved with neighborhood associations, scout leader, junior achievement, I mentioned that. I volunteer for some of the different things in Lincoln. I'm on the task force for the Building Codes Review Committee. I do a radio talk show on KZUM radio. It's 89.3 FM. It's a community radio station with a very small paid staff and 120 volunteers. And all the programming is done with volunteers. There's a variety of things. And ours is a talk show. It's called Our Street, and we air at 6 p.m. on Mondays, and we talk about neighborhood issues, those particularly concerning where my investments are. So most of my investments are in the older neighborhoods. Our places are very low rent, but very clean and high quality, well maintained, but still in the low rent range. That means that we're going to be in the older neighborhoods. We've got a cluster in Havelock, a cluster here south of campus, and a cluster in Union College, in the College View area. And then we've got the buildings in York. So those are the areas. Then we have scattered houses and duplexes all over the city. And because most of our properties are affected by issues about the quality of living and problem property issues and taxes and crime and those sorts of things, that's one of the reasons why I'm involved with our talk show, so that we can help advance the discussion about how does Lincoln be even better. Lincoln's probably one of the best cities in the world. You know all about it being the happiest city here recently, and on the top 10 lists of all the different categories, Lincoln's always rated highly. We have low crime, we have a great quality of living here in the city, and that's why we like living here and investing in properties. So we're trying to do everything we can to maintain that and support the property values of our investments. That's what I'm doing. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it. One thing that's really funny about our business, we have, every day we're trying to decide whether or not to rent to people. And a really funny thing happened yesterday. We use a service called Tenant Data Service. But this is our website, and we have evolved away from any print advertising. We do all internet advertising or our yard signs. And so we correspond with people by email, by text, everything's online, or we meet them in person or phone calls, but we don't do anything in print anymore, and it's really worked out well for us. And I had a young lady that was trying to rent a place, and she had this specific date. She sent me an email, I got to have a place by April 18th, and which ones are available. We went through all of our video tours, and I sent her some links. And finally she sent yesterday an email, I should have brought it with me, but it said essentially, thanks for the information, I like this one in particular, I got to have something by April 18th, and the reason is I'm getting out of jail and out of the halfway house on the 18th, and I'm in jail because of forgery, but it's not like a bad check, or she said, I was going through a bad divorce, and I sold my husband's truck on eBay for $1. And then she forged his name on the title when she delivered the truck to the guy. So she spent, I don't know how long, but she's been in jail for forgery for that. So I thought that was pretty humorous. And so I emailed her back, and I said, and then she said, is this a problem? And so I emailed her back, and I said, well, it depends. You still, probably, but if everything else in your life is perfect and that's the only bad thing, we might be able to help you out. Generally, we don't rent to people that are just getting out of jail. But hers was a unique situation. So the things that make us, the things that differentiate us in our business